Hey everyone, welcome to Shunya One, episode 186. Yet another very, very interesting conversation today. I'm talking with Abhishek Mohan, the founder of something called HempStreet. If you haven't heard about them, it's very likely you will, or definitely might have come across a bunch of articles which is out there on the internet. But HempStreet is first of its kind in India, uh, cannabis-based, Ayurveda-backed medical healthcare product. And I think this is a space we don't talk about much here on this show, but it's definitely one of the hottest spaces globally in startups, in to a certain extent, even in tech overall. And it's one of the hottest spaces to be in business, of course, globally. But in India, it's sort of like a very gray area where not much is known about what can be done or what is being done. And I think the conversation with Abhishek really helped unlock a lot of that. So, what you'll find is a very, very interesting story from a very, very interesting entrepreneur himself. So, let's take a break and jump right into the conversation.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. Advertising is Dead is back. Varun welcomes Arjun Vaidya, founder of Dr. Vaidya's, on the first episode. He talks about taking Ayurveda to urban Indians and imparts some marketing strategies. On Pesa Vesa, Anupam talks to Shreyhit Karkera, co-founder of Ditto Insurance and FinShots. They discuss the intricacies of the insurance process. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk break down the deep economic crisis taking place in Pakistan right now. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus Ayushi, Shreyas and Abbas discuss the Prime Minister's call to put the national flag as a WhatsApp DP. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina narrates the inspiring story of a blind man who handled his disability in an inspiring way. I'd like to remind you all about our merchandise once again. We got some amazing stuff out there with more coming soon. But go to the IVM Podcast website and check out our collection of t-shirts. You have to click on the shop tab and we'll take you to our partner Grow 91's website. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Hey, you want somebody to talk to your shows about, right? So talk to them about them. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms you're listening to us on. And remember, you can check us out on YouTube. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, Bode Lifestyle, Small Case, Capgemini, and Intel vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Hey Abhishek, welcome to Shunya One. How are you doing today?
Very good, Shiladitya. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you here. I love your background, by the way. It looks really, really cool. I'm not sure if it's a real one or not.
No, it's real. It's my study. Yeah.
Oh man, amazing. I love it. I can see you have
Yeah.
your
No, it
drum
is.
kit. I can see you have very, very cool. Where are you based, by the way?
So, between India and the Philippines. So right now I'm in the Philippines. Just gradually moving my family back to India. So I've kind of been shuttling back and forth. Just the
Mhm.
whole COVID stuff happened. My daughter was born, so moving has been a bit hard. But we're obviously making the move to India. But yeah, I'm in
Oh
Manila right
wow.
now. Yeah, it's my house in
Oh
Manila.
wow, amazing. I mean, again, like I say, the obviously the study looks great. I think we only have virtual backgrounds like this, so that's why I asked. But welcome to the show, and it's an interesting point that you mentioned. You've been in Philippines since the pandemic started, is it,
No, I've
or
been in the
even before
Philippines.
that?
I've been in Southeast Asia for 15 years, or 16 years actually.
Oh
Came out
wow.
here as a student, was part of a video games business that went public in 2010. Did some mobile security stuff with a bunch of Danish guys, fantasy football, venture building, and then India stuff. Obviously, India was startup studio and then HempStreet.
Amazing. And what was I think you guys started around 2019, obviously pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
What was you mentioned briefly, but what was the main inspiration behind getting into this business, and given again your background dabbling in a whole bunch of things later?
So, I was also co-founder of Technology Nine Lab, which was India's first startup studio. So I got a few Japanese friends to invest in it, and we built 37 ventures. Some of them can't raise money. We were disproportionately exposed to healthcare, so it became, and it was very evident from that view that we had front row seat that the Indian chronic pain situation was just incredibly bad. And the opioid crisis that happened in the US, I saw it firsthand in San Francisco. It's terrible. And the same thing's happening in Punjab and to a certain extent Kerala. So
Mhm.
that's something that we needed to end. And a few of my friends have built some of the top medical cannabis companies globally, from Israel mainly. Most of my best friends are Israeli. So I put the two together, and then we basically assessed the regulatory framework. We'd also incubated an Ayurvedic startup that's doing very well, and we looked at the regulatory framework. We realized that cannabis could solve some of those chronic pain issues, and then that's how we started. Spoke to hundreds of doctors, and gradually built a network, and today we're in 11,000 clinics that have a product in 25 states. Three products. We go after mass ailments. We're not a product pusher. We're not
Mhm.
FMCG. We look at mass ailments and we try to solve them. So essentially, we saw a terrible situation in India, said we needed to stop it, and that's how it started.
Wow. Wow. I want to pick your brain on a few other things before we get into the product and obviously HempStreet as it is today, right? You mentioned you looked at the space, and even before that, as a techie yourself, right, or as a someone in the entrepreneurial space, you mentioned that you've been in Southeast Asia all these years. You've worked, collaborated globally. Uh, there's so much happening in tech. What made you sort of like what was the personal sort of story which brought you to this, or is there one? Because I've
To
seen a lot of founders have that sort of personal story which brings them to a certain domain.
to medical cannabis.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in general, anxiety is something that being in entrepreneurial ventures all the time, it's something that's become a constant. But it's not a. I mean, now that I'm a dad, since the
Hmm.
last 20 months, I think it becomes very important for me to be very present. And even before that, I think as you get older, you realize your quality of life is everything, right? So,
Yeah.
and if you look at chronic pain, right? If you look at chronic pain, the typical Indian family lives in one room with seven people. You add chronic pain, sexual dysfunction to that, you'd most definitely end up with domestic violence. If that happens, then the children that grow up there grow up disadvantaged. So I think from my own example of like dealing with anxiety a lot,
Hmm.
and generally just being kind of part of that. I would say I'm not 1% definitely, but at least privileged. I studied abroad, I lived abroad. I didn't have to struggle like 99% of India did. I mean, 95% maybe. And I think it just the ability to try and change the quality of life of like a couple of 100 million people in one lifetime. I think that's a huge deal. That kind of was very
Of
attractive.
course. And when you said you looked at the regulatory framework, I know there's so much conversation around cannabis and anything to do with it in general. And obviously, the West has taken to this probably a few years, if not more, ahead of uh, overall regulation, management, productization of it. So, what was it in India? Like, did there even exist a regulation to begin with?
So cannabis has been part of Ayurveda forever, right? And it was not banned in 1985. So the leaf is what we use in Ayurveda. And
Hmm.
I'll touch upon the whole idea of legalization. India's, I mean, you won't believe this, but India is one of the few federally legal medical cannabis countries in the world, because you can sell it in any via doctors in any state. The idea is again product over purpose, right? So if your idea is to solve menstrual cramps, which is the first ailment that we went after, which we're leading the world right now in that
Hmm.
product. So the idea is, if you look at menstrual cramps, you look at an ailment. Forget your products; they don't mean anything. Forget 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 forget, yeah, don't obsess about products. So if you want to solve chronic pain or menstrual cramps, you say, what does this patient need? Is there a way to deliver something that solves that problem? Not, here I have CBD, how can I sell it to people? Those are the two different
Sure.
approaches, right? When you look at it, the latter, then India is not legal. But if you look at the former, via Ayurveda, via a standardized manufacturing process, via responsible dispensation, you can deliver a cannabis-based medication. Forget what it's called. It's not called, you know, uh, pain away or whatever, but it's called Tralokya Vijayavati, which is from the classical text. The idea is to provide a solution. Forget products. So if you're providing a solution, then India is federally legal. It surprised me. And so just the mindset, are you somebody that's trying to bring in products and push it on people, or are you looking at people and trying to find them a solution? If you're trying to find them a solution, India is super legal, man. We've shipped more product than most global players in menstrual cramps, at least.
Very interesting you say that, right? Because I think, not again, as an entrepreneur, you have to deal with all of this once you decide to sort of
I,
go solve a
I,
problem,
I'll
right?
give you an analogy, right? I'll give you an
Yeah.
analogy. Didn't we have fast, like I'm from Bombay, right? So If you come and tell me that we didn't have fast food before McDonald's, I'll be like, get the hell out of here, man. We had pani puri and bhel
Of
puri and
course.
everything.
Of course.
Did we not have entertainment before Netflix? Yes, we did. Do you
Of
choose to
course.
call it? Do we say, yeah, I mean, okay, do we have, oh yeah, I mean, that's so it's the same with everything. That's for healthcare. Like, and healthcare, we should be leading the world because we have all the problems of the world in India. Like, I'll give you, I mean, it's like in IT, for example, right? It took us 35 years to go from being the back end of the world doing cheap work to building fresh works and, all the cool stuff that's
Hmm.
Spotgraph and all that's coming out. But in healthcare, we don't have that luxury, right? Because we need to solve for today. We can't wait till everything falls into place so we can bring in the McDonald's equivalent of a cannabis-based medication, or can we do something for people today? And I think that's
Right.
that's really what drives us. Sorry, I just had to
No,
complete the thought. Sorry.
absolutely. What I was touching upon was similar, right? But as an entrepreneur, you sort of go into something with a problem statement. You make up your mind to solve it, and then you look at all the corners that you have to get into. So a lot of times, I think people don't. Obviously, as folks from the outside, we think of it as the opinion. Our opinion is based on, again, what superficial knowledge that we have, right? So you touched upon a few things which I think a lot of people don't have. I wouldn't say a high opinion about, or I would say just not enough information about both, not just cannabis and the health benefits of it and how it can be used and is being used globally, as well as what you're doing here, but also the Ayurveda part, right? The
Yeah.
Ayurveda part of it
Yeah.
is also something which I would say today's generation, our generation, is sort of ignores. It ignores the benefits of it, or it has a, yeah, they just don't give it enough credit.
Well, the
So
sad part
how do
is
you
it's
break
coming
that?
back. The sad part is but no, the sad but happy part also is that it's coming back via the West. Like the Ayurveda is huge on the West coast of the US, in British Columbia, in Canada, in South America, in Germany, in Hungary, in Japan. So I think the idea is that it's becoming cool again, primarily after COVID. Right? In COVID, I'll give you an example. If you're a rich diabetic in the US, yeah, you're fine in New York. You pop your, what's it called, maintenance pill. You don't even feel like you're sick, right? It's good. COVID comes out and kills you, right? So you realize now the whole concept of wellness has changed, right? Are you well? Are you just suppressing a symptom? Like if you have a headache, you take, I can't tell the brand name because I'll probably get sued, but yeah,
Sure.
just if you take a certain pill, and
Yeah.
and it,
Oh
it
man,
doesn't
we
it
have
doesn't
we all have our certain pills. Yes,
and it
for
doesn't
headaches.
it doesn't solve the underlying issue, right? The issue might be something deeper. So with
Yeah.
Ayurveda, it's a longer term. See, we got obsessed with instant cures, right? Instant suppression. Now, wellness after COVID, wellness has become an ongoing. It's become a debate on: Am I well right now? Am I living well? Am I Wellness is an ongoing process, right? It's not
Mm.
instant. So as a result, Ayurveda. So when it comes to long-term wellness, plant-based Ayurveda, anything that's close to food, what you eat, all that becomes important. It's not medication. So now the whole world is coming back to it after COVID. COVID woke up everybody on, like, people that were seemingly healthy have died, right? Which unfortunately. So I think COVID brought about that relapse of, not relapse, but the revival of, I would say, Ayurveda. It's gone nuts. And again, the Ayurveda in Ayurveda, right? Cannabis, the industry of cannabis was created by Wall Street largely around recreational, right? Even today, 90% of
Yeah.
the revenue is recreational cannabis. There's hardly any IP, which means it's a post-prohibition euphoria, right? It's not.
Right.
Medical is happening in Israel, and I don't know if we've had some very strong connections in Israel now in R&D. Medical is the world is leading. I mean, the leading edge research is happening in Israel, but the formulations that we had in Ayurveda for very specific cures are, I mean, I don't have, I mean, we will be doing clinical trials very shortly, but are working. So there's something about, in Ayurveda we use leaf and a very small amount of cannabis. It's not like cannabis is not the be all and end all. When it
Hmm.
interacts with other adaptogens like, ashwagandha, vanchlocha, all that stuff, it unlocks. See, cannabis has the property of absorption, anxiety, and anti-inflammatory, and those are the functions. Now you add other things to it to give very specific cures for irritable bowel syndrome. There's a few for menstrual cramps. There's, a few. And Ayurveda has all this. All we need to do is take it through the clinical validation process. Like we've disowned something beautiful. And I think,
Mm.
I'm also not that guy who says, yeah, legal hai to karenge, yaar, ye thing. No, we believe in clinical validation. And that's what we're doing. We're bringing back Ayurveda, bringing it to the 21st century, standardizing manufacturing, responsible dispensation, which I'll touch upon later, and you harnessing the power, but to at a middle ground with clinical validation. You can't say, see, this whole us and them between allopathy and Ayurveda is nonsense, right? I mean, it's basically every form of medicine has its own space, like surgery and and if you're like my arm falls off, I'm gonna get called 911 and ask them to put it back on, right? I'm not gonna
Yeah.
put haldi on it or something. But yeah,
Yeah.
so there is a purpose. But so I think the idea is the future is integrative and has to be patient driven. We're too obsessed with our products. We're too obsessed with our, like our, oh, we're from this side and we're from that side, and that's not really fair on the patient. So yeah.
No, and just to like round that off, right? I mean, you're obviously talking about something which has existed for eons. Like it's part of our culture. It's part of our you can say generally the fabric of society that India is in,
Yeah.
and obviously the productization of it is happening with the capitalist version of it today, and that's why people are probably believing in it again.
No,
But what is it? What is the uh, how do you get the science folks to also like buy into this?
clinical,
Have you had a
clinical,
struggle around
yeah, definitely. I mean, right now we are prescribed by largely Ayurveda doctors, but also some allopathy doctors, some other institutions as well.
that?
That's why we did the partnership with Gyneca and MGC in Israel and Australia and Slovenia, is to take our formulations to the clinical validation process. We'll be announcing something very exciting in the next month and a half in Israel.
Nice.
So the idea is clinical validation solves all, right? I mean, it's like in a startup, you can have politics and everything else, but sales solves everything, right? You sales and
Right.
profitability and everything goes fine.
Right.
Like okay, everybody
Right.
gets along. It's the same thing with medication. I think clinical validation solves all, right? And unbiased. See, once you validate it, like I said, listen, today we're using cannabis because cannabis is the best conduit for the problems we're trying to solve.
Right.
Tomorrow, if banana works better, HempStreet will be banana street or whatever. I know we'll use banana extract. It'll be yeah, it will be.
Nice.
You can't fall in love with your product. Fall in love
Right.
with solutions and keep solving. Don't fall in love with your product. It means nothing. It's a
Right.
plant. It's a great plant, but it's a
Right.
plant. Yeah.
Right. No, very, very interesting. And, I think we want to dive into a little bit of the details around what the product and product, the whole thing really is. But on that note, I'm going to take a quick break, come back and continue this conversation.
Previously on Varta Lab. After 3 wonderful seasons, Akash and Naveen went their separate ways in search for glory, comedy, and comedy glory. But all they found is long transit time, bureaucracy, and upset stomachs. Now, after 3 years of collecting stories and hustling,
I can't mention. Bullies. There's no need to overact. Bullies.
Akash and Naveen are back at the lab
Let's do it.
with
Stories. We've got stories. They're a little bit of funny and a little bit of December. You wanna hear them? It's got humans. They're sitting in a box and talking roll at worth all live.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Continuing our conversation with Abhishek. We are obviously we are talking about a bunch of things here. Cannabis products, cannabis in general, how it's been, let's say, received in the industry so far, and then the products that you've built, how you built HempStreet around that. But what if you get into the detail? You mentioned a few problems that you're solving. You mentioned menstrual cramps. You mentioned anxiety and all of these things that it's widely known for. These are large problems, agreed. These are places where allopathy and all the other solutions, some solutions exist, right? So how did you go about formulating what you've made? And could you tell us about both the process of building the product itself, because a healthcare product needs a lot more, I would say, validation before you even test it than, let's say, a piece of code, right? I mean, it's not easy as writing a piece of software and then trying it out. If it breaks, no problem. So what did you guys have to do as a company to really build the infrastructure to produce something of high quality? And then, of course, if you can talk about the detail of the product.
So, like I said, we started with the ailment, right? So, menstrual cramps doesn't have a fixed, like dysmenorrhea, for example, does not have a fixed medication. in across the board, women were taking random. Again, I can't tell you what tablets they mix and match to not
Sure.
get sued again. So, but that it was stuff that was menstruation is something that's very normal, right? 355 million women today of menstruating age, 158 million have debilitating cramps, which means they can't go to work, they can't do housework.
Yeah.
It's the quality of life is not very good, and and if you have something 4,000 times in your life, right, it's 4,000 months if you effectively times you take it. Times three and whatever, 4,000 times you're taking tablets. It better be a tablet that doesn't screw with your kidneys, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why that was the first problem. We spoke to a couple of hundred doctors. We realized menstrual cramps is a big issue. Women, as it is, I think there's a lot of repairing that needs to be done in our society. I mean, across the world, but in our society as well, right? So, and menstruation, the taboo. I think we felt that was something we could solve, and we revived a classical formulation of Ayurveda. And now the good thing about Ayurveda is that because the amount of cannabis in it, I mean, in Trailoक्ya Vijayavati, which is a flagship product, is basically less than 65 mg. So it's not, and it's from the leaf, so there's no psychotropic effect and all that
Mhm.
stuff. So the idea is that we revived a classical formulation, but we did collect data from hundreds of women, and we found it to be very effective. And now we're building a proprietary medication around the same that we're jointly developing with some pretty well-known people, and and then we're also looking at doing clinical trials. We've done one set of clinical trials for post-operative pain relief. We'll be releasing the findings soon. In terms of product, we did not. I mean, this is a classical formulation that we revived, which didn't. I mean, in Ayurveda and Ministry of Ayush, you're not required to do a clinical trial, but
Was
we
this
are
all
doing.
documented well? I mean, when you say
Yeah,
revived, is this
yeah,
something
yeah.
which was already prevalent,
Yep,
in
yep.
just
It was
not big enough? Okay.
already prevalent. The formulation was prevalent, but it was not being sold by anybody.
Okay.
So we found a specific. See, that's the thing. In Ayurveda, you have specific cures for specific ailments. It's just that we don't take it seriously, and
Right.
uh, and that's when we found from the data that it was working phenomenal. Like I'll tell you, our product has less than 5 mg of major cannabinoids. I mean, it's THC and CBD and everything. Around there, and we had a study with one of the largest cannabis companies in the world. They did a study dosing women with 320 mg of CBD twice a day to over 5 days to find some effect in pain relief. We were able to do that in 23 minutes with much lower dose based on Ayurveda. So I think there's something that about this polyherbal phytopharma that is Ayurveda that is extremely powerful that we're only discovering. So everything, I mean, like I said, we revived this, but we are putting it through the clinical validation process. So any products that come out, whether classical or proprietary, we intend to put everything through clinical validation.
So as a in the infrastructure or in the value chain of what HempStreet does today, what is it that you are actually doing? Obviously,
So
ingredients, manufacturing. Which parts of the system are you taking
so we
care?
basically are end to end. So we're research to retail. So we're partnered with foreign players. We're partnered with CSIR and Jammu, the Indian Institute of Integrative Medicine, which is one of the apex bodies. We're undertaking research on a transdermal patch, and we're looking at a couple of other research projects. We also won the Bharat Biotech grant, the first ever cannabis company to win. And we also do um, manufacturing. We have two facilities that we control the shop floor on. And raw material, of course, comes from the government, from the excise department. So we don't grow. Growing is illegal. And from there, we also do we also directly, what do you say, only directly transport it to doctors. We don't sell online. We don't sell e-prescriptions. We only provide our products to doctors, and we track the whole thing end to end via the blockchain, so that we know where we've sent anything. So in case the government or anybody wants to try 5 years down the road, I can show them everything that's moved everywhere on the blockchain. Because
Wow.
at the end of the day, you need to preemptively, in a very young. There's two ways of looking at industry, right? Either you go and try and get the government to play catch up and bust you each time, and you find corners to exploit, or the second, and to grow your business, or the second is you preemptively regulate yourself with a long-term view. Because end of the day, if you get banned, if the industry goes down, patients suffer. So if you want
Right.
to be something that's not opioids, opioids are good for palliative care. They're good for extreme pain, but they were prescribed wrongly, right? People were just peddling them. So if you need to solve that, you need to be not that. So we deployed today the world's biggest ever deployment of blockchain in clinic network in the world. Yeah, so
Oh wow.
in India,
Could
yeah, in
you
India, it's
share a
amazing.
little bit more about that? I mean, blockchain is a word which gets again thrown around a lot. So,
Yeah. We didn't do it. It's not ICOs or tokens or any of that. We use the Stellar blockchain with our partners, Whole Chain, and Whole Chain is an American company, founded by a friend of mine, and I mean we're friends now, and they've been doing tracing for anti-slavery for cocoa. Like you have to trace to see if
oh
your
yeah,
chocolates come from
yeah,
slave. That's a big problem, right? I mean, that's the thing.
yeah.
Like supply chains need to be like for any regulated substance. I mean, forget coffee and cocoa and all that. That has tremendous issues that need to be solved. Or fisheries, they also track overfishing and tuna and all that. And they
Yes.
work with the FDA. They work with Estee Lauder to track, ingredients of, I would imagine, perfumes and stuff like that. But in our case, it's very important that the patients don't suffer, right? So you have to kind of regulate in a way that there's safe access, but at the same time, you
Mhm.
know where everything is gone, so you don't have over ordering. And like I said, we don't sell online, we don't sell e-prescriptions. I could easily do that because I don't think that's fair. I think it's cannabis at the end of the day is still a regulated substance. It is not for everybody. Like I'd love to say, okay, everybody buy the product, go to a doctor. No, it's not for everybody. The doctor needs to
Yeah.
observe you. Your body type may not be for it. So I think it's very
Right.
important that the first visit is physical with a doctor upon examination, and that you go back to your doctor each time you need a refill. I mean, I, I don't see it. I mean, if we are, I think it's very, very important that supply chain is tight, and that's what we've done.
And was this like a conscious decision to sort of go blockchain? Again, blockchain also means transparency with
Yep.
regards to everyone sees everything versus being your own, let's say, HempStreet CRM or whatever.
I, I shared
So
I
yeah,
shared I shared on LinkedIn the video of all our product movements. It's on my LinkedIn. I mean, everybody
awesome.
cannot see all my things at all the time, but I have a username and password I can give the government if they want to see it. And
Interesting.
eventually, we want to help the whole industry become. I mean, I've had conversations, and we want the whole industry to be on it. I'm not sitting and
Right.
hiding it. I think we have to be pro-patient. Like India is in such a dire state, not because of any governance issue. I'm not. It's very easy to complain about the government and all that stuff. These
Right.
are all solvable issues, but you have to accept that the quality of life of most people in India could definitely use a lot of improvement. And if you have to do that, then you need to build based on a long term, not some quick buck like selling weed online. Great, you can try that, but that's not what we're here for.
And let's talk also about the, let's say, the healthcare community, right? Now the doctors who you engage with, again, they are essentially the conduit for any sort of access to these products, as well as they're, the way I understand it, they're also the biggest proponents of any healthcare products in the market, right? I mean, I think every pharmaceutical company, everyone is pretty much after doctors to quote unquote peddle their wares.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
what's the ethos on which you work with, and how do you make sure that you make the right partnerships with the right doctors,
I
while
mean,
not
yeah.
let's say restricting access to people who genuinely need your product?
So basically, it took us a year and a half to basically get our doctor network to where it at. Doctors are not; they wouldn't just trust any product. In Ayurveda, it's a very big reputation business,
Right.
right? So our doctors don't just pick up anything. And so, and as a result, ailments, right? We spoke to maybe 200 doctors before we even started deciding on the first ailment. So we were solving a problem that already existed that was underserved. So doctors have been prescribing cannabis to their patients since a long time, but it's been crushed up or non-standardized. Supply chain is broken. We just took that and brought it to the 21st century. So I think that we didn't. I mean, we were solving an unmet need, and that's why the doctors. It wasn't like we were saying replace this with this. No, we're not fighting. We don't
Mm.
pay doctors. We don't send them on trips. We don't do any of that. Yeah,
Right.
well, we don't. So you can check. We don't. So I think, and again, compared to product versus solution, right? Today we're the biggest player in the market by far in terms of network, in terms of doctor network, in terms of I don't know everybody else's sales, but I think we're doing okay. But we only have three products. We've been around for 3 years. We only have three products, so we're very ailment focused. We're not like
Right.
here's 200 products, please put it on your shelf. We're like here's an
Right.
ailment, we have a solution for it. So we've resisted the temptation of like shelf stuffing. We've resisted the temptation of Yeah, doctor pushing. We've done all. I mean, we've taken it gradual, but today we've, the underlying. Again, if you go out to solve a mass ailment or a mass problem, it's very rare unless your product is crap. It doesn't work. It's very rare that you won't scale.
Right. No, so that's where I think the question came from, the fact that it is this sort of these intricacies of the space that prevents a lot of entrepreneurs also from getting into it, right? It's the red tape of both government, and then it's the whole shadiness of working with doctors and all the way downstream, right? I mean, doctors in major healthcare, major hospitals is one thing. Doctors, as the doctor network exists in India, which I'm sure now you've seen, is like super detailed, right? I mean, could you tell us a little bit about your learnings also from these 3 years about how healthcare is administered in India? I think you mentioned you were going to talk about
Yeah,
this earlier on.
yeah. So I think that see again, cannabis, for example, right? Cannabis, a lot of questions. I mean, everybody asked me like, what was this? There's this bunch of stigma. People have gone to jail. Like,
Yeah.
are the doctors resisting? Like, do people are afraid to take it? But the answer I gave them is like there's a level of trust between doctor and patient, especially in rural India. I think Ayurveda is the dominant deliverer of health. Deliverer is the right word. Deliverer of healthcare, right? So there's a level of trust, like women, for example, and they are. So we're in our network. We're working about 3 or 4 thousand women doctors, and menstrual pain and menstrual cramps is something women talk to women about. It's still pretty hard, to talk to a male doctor about it. I would imagine. I mean, I'm mansplaining.
Mm,
I don't really know.
mm,
So, so I think we didn't find stigma among the patients because they trust the doctors. The doctors wanted, for a year, they just wanted to know that we were legit, that we were standardized, where our manufacturing happened, were we doing, testing on the products and all that stuff, like, hardness and disintegration and testing for various impurities and all that stuff. Were we following the classical text accurately? All that. After that, the doctors agreed. And again, we didn't come with 100 products. We came with one at a time, saying that this is a mass ailment, which the doctors have themselves told us about. So it was that fulfilling an unmet need, which but then also explaining to the doctors over a year that we were legit. We were not a fly by night. We were not trying to sell weed. We didn't do e-prescriptions. But we also
mm,
greatly value the doctor, right? I mean, the doctor. The idea is you can't use the Ayurveda loophole to sell online and then just have one doctor that's pushing a yes button on every prescription, right? That's not
mm.
something. It was that we chose the hard way, and we're better off for it. So yeah, to answer that shortly, the short answer is that it was an unmet need. So the doctors wanted to know what it was. Once they knew
Mm.
that it was legit, they were okay with it. The patients, there's no stigma because they take what the doctor gives them.
Right. So, in a sense, like you said, unmet need. Did you look at addressable market size and then say, okay, this is something which will get solved over these 3 years? How have you seen that growing? Can you talk to us about
Yeah.
like the where this is going a little bit?
So on the menstrual cramps product, we've shipped over 4.5 million doses in the last since we started really started in I would say June last year. I would imagine really being on really shipping product. So it's
Hmm.
today we're the biggest in the world in terms of for menstrual pain. I would say we're the biggest in the world in cannabis. For the irritable bowel syndrome product, we just started. It's doing really well. It's not, but it's moving quite fast. The sexual wellness product also is doing okay, but really the menstrual cramps, because it's such a mass ailment, and it's also been Salocavigility also has the anti-anxiety element, which is also what it's being prescribed for. But again, primarily around menstrual pain, which is 155 million women in India, and our key
Right.
was to provide a standardized solution, cost effective, and it's cost effective. So it's just, yeah, it grows. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of volume, and which is why we've garnered so much. Like, everybody kind of wrote off India, saying, "Oh, it's pre-legal, whatever," but they saw a scale. And when I went out to
Right.
New York and I spoke and I said, "Listen, you guys are selling candy, like, you're selling candy that makes you high. It's great money, but we can save
Mm.
lives. We can solve human issues, like, and it's fine. I mean, recreation is perfectly fine, but it's a personal choice. But don't call it medical." So I think that's when we started getting attention. And now with our scale, people are like, "Wow, there's so much action in India." And today we have,
Right.
when we were in Israel, we also got the attention, the most high tech, community in the world. The Ayurveda
Right.
had its place, a couple of weeks ago. And I think that's why we've chosen ailment that we want to fight, and we've been doing a decent job, but we're not even like 1-2% of where we can be in the next 10 years.
And have you looked at what the size of market could be, not just for the current products that you have, but what else you might want to get into?
Yeah.
Like, have you laid out your roadmap, so to speak?
Absolutely. Like if you look at the ailments that cannabis solves with Ayurvedic formulation, like irritable bowel syndrome, that's 30% of the world. I mean, I would say 15 to 20% of the world, especially meat-eating countries. That's crazy, right? I mean, like Pfizer, was it? Pfizer just bought into Arena for like 7 billion to research on colic issues and gut health. With their Ayurveda has something, and we're already in the market. Um, Menstrual cramps. Yeah, women around the world. There've been attempts, even in the. I mean, as I speak in the U.S. and it's a common problem for women around the world. You have to, and the stigma doesn't exist as much as India, but you're still buying stuff that you're mixing and matching. Why can't you have your own solution? Something happens every month. So I think that's a massive. I would say in the billions. Like I mean, I'm expecting to have at least 250 million patients in over the next, I would say 7 or 8 years across the world.
And what is the, if I can ask, like obviously every company sort of looks at the moat. So what is it? You said you looked at classical preparations and you're
Yeah.
essentially using those because they worked, obviously. So how do you develop, or how have you thought of developing a moat? Or is it just in process, or is it just in
No.
the
I
legalities
think
of
it's
it, or what is it?
I think it's a stage-wise thing, right? So what we did first was we understood doctors were the conduit. This is not something we wanted to sell online. So we worked on a doctor network through our partnerships, through our, and then also onboarding some fantastic people that work with us. Uh, Today we're at 11,000 clinics. We were at 1,040, 15 months ago. So that's, I
Hmm.
mean, I would say
Wow, massive growth.
we're safely about 20 times or 30 times the size of the next player in terms of clinic network. Now that's the first differentiator, right? Because it allows you to distribute, it allows you to harness that distribution capability when you have a new product. It also gives you the patient footfall. The second is we go after mass ailments. Like, I mean, I would say globally people went after low hanging fruit, high THC, it's just anxiety. We went for mass ailments, very specific mass ailments. So all our communication, all our fight is very focused. So we
Right.
also focus our capital on solving. So we've got this big distribution network with mass ailments. That means the most likely a majority of the patients have that need. So we created
Right.
a funnel. We focus on
Right.
mass ailments. Now the next step is, I think the future is basically, I would say it, I'll say it again, it's India and Israel, really, the high tech of Israel and the formulations of India. So that's, we realize the next step is basically to take Ayurveda to the 21st century, to take clinical validation. That is going to be the game changing thing that will happen. And I think a lot of my colleagues in the industry are also looking at that. Now, started off with the distribution, mass ailments, clinical validation, intellectual property. So we are working on several IPs right now. And that's the thing that scales, the gift that keeps giving, right? It scales, you can license it
Right.
abroad, all that stuff. So that's, I mean, I'll say it, everybody knows, I speak in it, it's no secret what our plan is. And at the end of the day, it's always going to be about the patient. I think for us, I think the entire team is driven by solving. We want to do cool stuff. We want to do, I mean, yeah, money is great. You solve a mass ailment, you're going to make money. I mean, not like we're doing now, but well, it'll happen. We'll make a lot of money. But I think the idea that in one lifetime, you can not solve, but you can improve the quality of life of 400 million people. That's effing cool, man. That's the best thing.
No, that's absolutely inspirational, and I know you've obviously, I think you raise funds as well, but clearly what you're sharing is that it's already out there, the market is primed, it's working, your network's obviously stable and growing, and we can definitely hope that more and more people discover the product and actually find value from it, obviously by getting their problem actually solved. I think that, like you said, is the best validation, and we will obviously
Abs-
look forward to everything that comes down the pipe from HempStreet. Abhishek, in closing notes, I mean, do you want to share, everything that you mentioned today? What's the best place to reach out to you for people who are interested in this conversation, and also if they want to know more about the company, where's the best
So,
place to go?
I mean, check us out on LinkedIn. I think I'm the most active on LinkedIn, actually. Abhishek Mohan, HempStreet. I think there's a few Abhishek Mohans, but, I'm Indian. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
pretty, I didn't know it was that a common name, but yeah, there's a few, but HempStreet would solve that issue. And then check out hempstreet.in, HEMP, street.in. And we also have our YouTube channel, and you can catch me on Twitter as well, but I'm not so active. LinkedIn's
Hmm.
where it's at for me. And yeah, reach out to me.
And
I speak to everybody. So anybody wants to start off in hemp, even compete with us, I'll be happy to share with you some of the steps so you don't get into trouble and stuff like that. So yeah.
no, that's absolutely. I think that's it's really noble of you to share that. And of course, given that this domain is like we started off the conversation with it, so little is understood about it. I think it's folks like yourself who have understood it a little bit to share their knowledge is really important. So thank you for that, and of course for everyone listening to this show. Please, if you love this conversation, leave us a rating and a review wherever you're listening to this. It definitely helps. And Abhishek, once again, thank you for sharing so much about not just your personal journey with HempStreet, but also what so much more to unlock in terms of potential and the things that you guys are trying to do. So more power to you, of course, and everyone at HempStreet. And thank you so much for sharing this with
Thanks for
us.
having me. It's been super. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.